Casey, thank you so much for coming and for bringing all the beautiful flowers we have in our studio today. And I know you work with your sister in flower arranging, but tell us how you got started. It's such an interesting story.
Oh, thank you. Well, I actually started working on cruise ships right out of college, and one of my jobs ended up being to maintain the fresh flower arrangements that would come on board wherever we might have been in the world. And so I got to really appreciate talent of the local designers in Venice or Istanbul. But then I got transferred to another ship in the fleet, and the flowers came out in boxes, and I had to do the arranging. So I actually wrote to my parents, I need some help, and they sent me a book called The 5-Minute Flower Arranger. And that gave me the basics to figure it out. And I spent the next 2 years traveling around the world and building these glorious flower arrangements from all over the place. Orchids from Singapore and mums and the tulips in Holland. So.
And your sister is in business with you.
Yes, because then I got off the ships and she was getting married in Los Angeles and said, hey, can we do my flowers? So
of course.
Why not? So we did, and then after that, all her friends wanted to know how to do flowers, so we started teaching them, and then people were hiring us for weddings. Next thing we knew, we're teaching workshops at the Huntington Botanical Garden, and we have our own studio space, and we do events all the time. So
oh, well, it's wonderful. But you know, it's kind of like the magic trick. You see somebody do a magic trick and you say, how did they do that?
Yes.
And it's the same thing with floral arrangements. You think, how did they do that? And you do teach all the time, and you're going to teach us a specific concept today. What do you call this?
This is called a pavé, and it's a French word. And if you think about the pavers all over France in the Old Town, how all the cobblestones are laid right next to each other, very tight, very compact. So we're going to mimic that in a flower arrangement. And it's also referred to in jewelry, pavé jewelry, with all the jewels encrusted right next to each other.
Kind of like a mosaic effect.
Exactly. So we're going to do that with our flowers. And we're also doing another technique, not just the pavé, but color blocking, where you group together the different colors of flowers, and it just makes it look more interesting when you look at it.
Let's see how easy this is. You can show us how to do this from start to finish.
Yes, indeed. So we're going to start with a very nice container, very inexpensive and watertight. And for us, that qualifies for a great container because we'd rather spend our money on the flowers, not on the container, because it disappears by the time the flowers are in there. We're also using a tool we call Floral Foam, and it's just turned the floral industry around in the 60s because it took place of those frogs that used to have to stick stems into, and it acts like a sponge. It's very lightweight to start. Completely soak it with water, and then you cut it to shape.
And you can cut it to any size.
Any size at all. And it actually has little lines on it to say if you need a third or a half, but we have right now about a half a brick in there. And then we just pop it in there, and you want to make sure it's pretty secure because you don't want everything to go falling out. So that's the first step. So it's full of water, and we're not going to add water to the container right now because as we poke our stems in there, it will displace water. And by the time we finish the arrangement, it would be almost overflowing. So we'll water our flowers
Wait till we get
later.
through.
Yes. And what you need to do whenever you're working with floral foam, and it goes for working in vases too, is to remove all the greenery that's going to be below the foam line or below the water line. And the reason is because that little greeneries that are on your stems will start to break down very fast and will start to rot, actually.
They get slimy and
they do
smell bad.
So you want to and you also want a very clean entry with your stems because the foam acts like a little hug every time you put your stem in, so it'll hold it nice and tight so things don't go falling out along the way. So what I've already done with most of everything, I've got it prepped, but I wanted to show how to prepare some of the stems to go into the foam. So I'll show you, this is a carnation, and it's very fresh because it's still very tight. And what you do to open up carnations to give them a little bit more fullness, as my sister would say, you pet it like a kitten very gently. And it opens, it doubles in size. And then from here, we know we're not going to need all of this stem because that would be silly. So I'm going to cut away most of it. And then I'm going to peel away these two bits of greenery.
Hand?
The greenery can go off by hand. Sometimes not. When we work with roses, which I'll step to here, if you were to pull the leaf all the way off, it would actually strip some of the stem, and then the stem would actually need to send energy, the flower would send energy to the stem to heal it, and we don't need, we need all the energy to go towards the flowers. So for this one, we know we're not going to need all this extra stem, so instead of having to worry about cleaning it, we're just going to cut most of it off, and then we're going to cut away the individual blooms like this. And we're going to place
those in. Like when you cut broccoli and you cut those little individual little flowerets.
That's right. And then also on spray roses, you usually find a little bloom here that's been cut, but this was done by the grower, which caused the flowers to spray. So sometimes when you get this, you think, oh, the best one isn't there. But actually, it was meant to be done, so you just trim it off.
Trim it off.
So you can't even see it. So then
see.
we're set. So I have that one stem. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little blooms that are going to add to our beautiful pavé. Next, we're going to use a rose.
Yellow rose, my favorite flower in the world.
Yes, beautifully opening. And again, we don't need all the greenery. There aren't any thorns on this rose, which is unusual because they can be found on the backs of leaves, on the main part of the stem, and sometimes up here in the little bristly area. So we're going to cut the bulk of this stem off too, so we're left with this. And again, we might need to adjust a little bit as we place in there.
Okay.
And our last component are Hypericum berry. And these come in about 3 or 4 different colors, reds and yellows, and they're actually the seed pod from the St. John's wort herb.
Is that right?
Yes. I've never seen the flower.
No, me either.
But these are very popular, and the red ones at the mart, they refer to as coffee beans because they do look just like a coffee bean. And these are just really
That's very
cute.
pretty.
They add a little bit of greenery without the fluffy leaves. And
Is it kind of a filler?
exactly, yep, a filler. So we're going to trim away here the main part of the stem, and then we're going to leave this
Move
part.
this out of
I'll
your
get
way.
all that out of the way. And we're going to use it like this.
Okay.
So all of our little components there. All right. So now we have our container, fresh, clean canvas, and we're just going to mimic what we did here earlier. So we're going to take we're going to start with our
yellow
bigger
rose,
flowers because covering more real estate faster is a little bit more, it's easier then to fill, then you can fill in with all your little pieces.
ones. I see.
So
Good
again,
point.
we have our roses here, and it's probably still a little bit on the long side because we want the base of the rose to be flush against the top of the floral foam. So I'm going to give another trim here, and I'm going to come in a little bit on the side and place it in, and it holds it very nicely.
Those
We're going to go
beautiful
ahead and
flowers.
continue, and I'm going to give you one to slide in there next to it. And you want to feed the stem in right where it meets the foam. Very nice. And then I'll put this one
Can be your
in
assistant
there.
now.
Yes, indeed.
Got it.
So we have that corner done, and we're going to do these 2 corners, and we're going to use our orange carnations. If you want to see if
Carnations are so nice,
any
aren't they?
fluffing.
Because they last so long.
they last so long, which I realized on the ships when I worked there. I love the carnations. I love you're going to squeeze your together and slide down. The carnations lasted so well on the ships. The chrysanthemums lasted well. So I got to really appreciate the long-lasting flowers. I'm going to fluff all those open. And we're going to take quite a bit off again. And right above where that little nodule is, you're going to give it a slice. You can cut it a little bit angle, which you did. That's great because a pointy end goes in a lot
doing this
easier.
one, right?
Yep, a pointy end goes in a lot easier than a blunt end.
These are pretty carnations. I like the 2 colors.
The two-tone, they're very
Two-tone.
popular. They're called novelty or two-toned when you have that. And it has a little bit of the hot pink in there, which we're going to pick up with our spray roses. And they sometimes have a nice smell. And often, commercially cut flowers or grown flowers have lost a little bit of that smell.
Oh.
Yes. So
Those
now,
little- what are these miniature
these are
roses?
spray roses.
Spray roses.
Yes, and was to come like this, and it's wonderful because they have a
Oh, isn't
wonderful
that pretty?
spray of all these different buds that have blossomed out there. And we're going to add these on there. Okay. Now we're going to work these out, and we're going to put a set here and a set over here. So we're going to give you a handful of these, and some of them you might have to cut a little bit shorter, but some will be long enough. I'm going to put those all around.
Can I use some of these?
Yes, please. All right.
This one's kind of long. Where would you put this one
You
since
can just
it's
cut them a little short. You can put them right in the middle there. We're going to
Okay.
separate these with some Hypericum berry. And I'm going
I
to,
love those little roses. Those are so pretty.
they're so lovely. Great. And then we have our Hypericum berry, and I'll work a little bit more with those. And we're going to fill in right here along here with our Hypericum berry.
Do we want it rounded or do we want it pretty much level?
We want it about level with everybody else.
Okay.
Gonna add some here. And keep adding. It's basically filling in the blanks. What you're trying to achieve is to hide all of the floral foam that is here, because that's a good sign of a good designer, when all the floral foam has gone hiding. And sometimes we'll notice that when we're out looking at other designers, and you'll say, gosh, they did a really great job, because I don't see the floral foam over there. You want to look at your sides too, because if you've got guests coming in the evening and they're looking at the sides and you're
sitting
looking
all
straight
around the
down,
table.
so you sometimes do a nice little scoot around,
Like
see what we
here
can
we
find
have,
right in there. And then you can add a little bit, and I'm going to do a couple little color blocking over here with some of the little roses.
And this is called Pavé in
Pavé,
color blocking.
Color blocking. Nice low arrangements, have a really great luxurious look to them, and just packed full of color, and it makes them look a little bit more expensive when they're like this. And there are a lot of stems in here, so
They're right.
it lends itself to look
Well,
that
we'll
way.
go ahead and give it the final touch and play with it a little bit more, but thank you so much for showing us how easy this really is to do, and it's a beautiful arrangement.
Thanks,
Thanks, Casey.
You're welcome.